The biggest takeaways from Big Ten football media days, what you need to know about the Iowa Hawkeyes with the man that was there, Tom Kakert from Hawkeye Report today. Locked On Hawkeye.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes Podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts. You can also find us on YouTube. While you're there, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. As the playoffs have finished up, the sports just stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, how about this? FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Tom Kakert from HawkeyeReport.com joins us. Tom, Indianapolis, another one in the books. Football season in the air. We're getting closer and closer. Appreciate it as always. How was Indianapolis for you, Tom?
Indy's always nice. I mean, it's a great town. It's so easy to get around in Indy. But 3 days of the Big Ten is just, I mean, it's the SEC, the same thing. 3 days of SEC. Just, it doesn't, I'm old enough to remember when it was just a 2-day event and everybody talked on this one day, and then we had the round tables the next with the players, and that was it. I had a luncheon in Chicago, and that was it.
Yeah.
And now those days are long gone.
I remember the first time I went to media days, probably, I don't know, almost 15 years ago, I guess it is now, and sitting at a table inside, what was the McCormick place? I think maybe it was at that time. And just sitting at a table, going up and talking to Joe Paterno. I mean, it was very intimate, very familiar. And yeah, we're talking about a different era. We're talking about a different time. I think Nebraska was just getting ready to join or just joined, whatever it was. But a completely different environment. With 18 teams, it's more difficult. You're putting it on the big stage. You're putting it on the field in Indianapolis. But those moments are gone. And for somebody like you that just covers Iowa football, is there anything that you really get out of anything else outside of maybe what Tony Batiti, the commissioner, has to say?
Yeah, that's why I just kind of limited myself to 1 day. I'm like, well, what am I going to do on these other days? Am I going to, go talk to Jed Fish about playing in Iowa?
Right.
Is that really going to be interesting? Is it worth spending another extra night at a hotel to do that? I don't think so. So but back in the day, that would have been something to talk about. You bounce around table to table talking to, guys like Joe Paterno or whoever. And now you just, it's different. It's lost kind of some of the fun of it. John Bonenkamp and I were talking as we were leaving. I remember those days in Chicago, we're at the Fugitive Hotel, as we call it, the Hilton where the end of the Fugitive was shot. And, walking out of there with those duffel bags full of media guides. Now we don't even get a media guide. We don't get any media guides now. Just everything's online. Just sign of the times.
It really is. And a really good point of just how different things are, how different we are when we're talking about this. Yeah, very interesting, Tom. Tom Kakert, HawkeyeReport.com, joining us here. You got to stop at the Beef House, though? Is that the picture that I saw?
That was, John and I stopped at the Beef House on the way back. So got that in, got the rolls, a little steak, a little potato. Yeah, it was delicious as always.
Yeah, exactly what you're looking for. No doubt about it. All right, Tom, let's get into what we learned. And the depth chart comes out. We overreact as we always do to the depth chart. And I'm okay with that. I like to overreact to the depth chart. It's one of those another checkpoints of the season for me that I absolutely enjoy. A couple of things that I thought jumped off. 3 wide receivers listed and all the defensive linemen that are listed. I want to go this direction with you with that defensive line. I've told you before, this is my biggest concern. If this defense is not going to play at an elite level, it's because of the lack of depth at defensive line. 2005, expectations. They were really young up front on the defensive line, and they struggled that season. 2010, the lack of depth there. That has been the reason many times that Iowa seasons have disappointed. Are there any youngsters, guys that aren't even listed and that too deep. That freshman class of defensive linemen, I'm excited about all 4 of those guys. Is there anybody that can help right away, though?
Yeah, there's nobody on that group that I don't think can help right away. I think those guys all got to fill out a little bit. But I had Kelvin Bell on our podcast a little while ago, and we talked about that, and it was just he's comfortable if it's only 6 guys that you trust.
Mm-hmm.
But I talked to Kirk about it in Indianapolis, and he was like, it's one of the things we've got to do in camp is we got to develop some depth. But you like the top 4. I mean, those guys, 2 starters back plus Graves and Herkett, both solid players. But, when Jeremiah Pittman was in there last year, it wasn't great. He struggled.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got to take a leap. And that's just your 3rd guy at defensive tackle. I think Max Llewellyn is really solid as a 3rd defensive end.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. I think he's got a potential maybe to lead Iowa in sacks this year.
Wow.
I think he's pretty good. Brian Allen, ton of potential, but it's the consistency. If he can get the consistency down, defensive end is solved. But they've got to, in my opinion, they got to find another defensive tackle. Now, Jeff Bowie is listed as the backup to Graves. And then after that, it's Will Herbert, a walk-on, and Luke Gaffney, another walk-on from Linmar. So they've got to find some help. I think they would have loved to have went in the portal and maybe got, like a Jack Heflin kind of addition for that defensive tackle position. But as you saw, as the portal developed this year, boy, the defensive line, defensive tackles were just like the Great White Buffalo. They were, I think the kid ended up at USC or Oregon. Maybe it was Oregon. Kid who was just like fairly average kid from Wyoming.
Yep, I remember that.
He ended up getting almost like $1 million. Just an average guy. That just tells you how high the demand was for that position.
Difficult for Iowa to swim in those waters. And though they're in good shape compared to a lot of programs out there, they're not at a level that they can pay $1 million for a backup defensive tackle. And that certainly looks to be the case there. Another component that I wanted to get into, you mentioned Brian Allen. We saw him 2 springs ago, look good. Last spring, looked good. Last Kids Day, looked really good. So what's keeping him off the field when we see it in these practices? At minimum, a guy that can get to the quarterback. Why didn't we see more reps out of him at least a year ago?
Yeah, it's the consistency factor.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Kelvin Bell will tell you, that can't just do it in flashes, can't just do it on game day. You got to do it in practice to show him that you can do it in practice too. And once he gets that consistency and that light bulb comes on, I think and I think that's going to happen this year. I really do. And we may see him, because they kind of tinkered with this a little bit from time to time, where they move him when they go to that Raider package or the rush package. They move him down to defensive tackle. And maybe that's a place where you can maneuver him down that way and see what he can do. That he could potentially kind of float between the 2 positions to give them a little added depth at both spots.
Like to see that. Speaking of depth at the offensive line position, let's go to the other side. They feel good about 7 guys. I've got this question, Tom. I'm sure you have as well. Why is it going to be different with this offensive line? They've been around for a long time. They all got a lot of starts between them. We see 7 guys with starting experience. Why is this year going to be a big jump forward when we just haven't seen it throughout the course of all these guys' career?
And it's a totally fair question, and I think it has to do with health more than anything else, because the second half of last year, Mason Richmond was not healthy, and he was not moving well at all. And he was still out there playing, and bless him for going out there and doing it, but he probably shouldn't have been playing.
Yeah.
Somebody should probably set him down. He just wasn't moving well. Bo Stevens, I think he had 3 different injuries last year. One in camp, and then I remember the Northwestern game, he got hurt again. Logan Jones was banged up. Dunker at the end of the year was banged up, had his shoulder worked on. after the year. Really, the only guy that was healthy out of that starting group was Connor Colby. And so all those guys are healthy right now. And if they can stay healthy, then the feeling is that group can really excel if they're healthy. And they've got two quality backups. Ellsbury, I thought, did a terrific job at center when he was called upon, and has done a great job at guard too. And he can switch between those two positions. And Nick DeYoung, guard and tackle, I mean, he's serviceable. But Kirk said he wants more depth at those positions. So, and I think what he was talking about there was developing guys like Trevor Lauk, who's listed as a backup right tackle right now, and Cade Pieper, who's listed as a backup guard. I think he's high on both those guys, but I think he wants to get to the position where he can play those guys and feel comfortable about it. Right now, he just feels comfortable with 7.
And they need guys like Trevor Lauk to hit, because you look at what's happened over the last half decade, the David Davikovs of the world, the guys that they thought were going to be impactful, not just players, impactful tackles, and it hasn't been there. And Caden Proctor obviously not being here. And there's a long list now of the reasons I think that this offensive line has struggled: recruiting misses, injuries, and just missing out on some prospects that they normally got in the past, I think has led to kind of where they are right now. Hey, Tom, another direction for you. Mentioned the 3 wide receivers listed and had some fun with that after the depth chart came out on Wednesday, going through just the names. But I think maybe something that we should have maybe caught on to a week ago is when you guys had the opportunity to talk to some of the players, and they had Jarriet Buie that was out there talking to you guys. And then he shows up as the 3rd starting wide receiver on the depth chart, comes out here. We got Tim Lester's. He got a little crush on Buie. It feels like maybe we got a chance for a wide receiver to actually pop here.
Yeah, he has done well. And I know they're very high on him. Kirk was very high on him at Media Day this past week. Just think he's got a chance to be really good. The other development I thought at wide receiver was, and not a surprise, Terrell Washington Jr. Jumping in and now listed as a full-time wide receiver. He could still kind of find his way to the backfield at times, but I think he's going to be a guy who's spending most of his time at the slot. And, you know, I think Bowie's going to probably start the opener with Caleb Brown.
Right? Yeah.
Probably be him and Seth Anderson, I would imagine, get the start, and maybe they come out in 3 wides and it's Washington or somebody like that. But the other guy to watch there, I know had a really good spring, and I know that Tim Lester's really high on, is Caden Witchen. Lester just loves the guy, just catches everything, and good route runner. You know, I know that won't excite Iowa fans a whole lot, but you know, it's the Nick Easley story all over again, or Riley McCarron or somebody like that. Yeah, but we just want guys who can catch the ball and get downfield.
More coming up with Tom Kakert from HawkeyeReport.com as we deep dive into football media days, and there is a lot to get into. Luke Lachey was there. Jay Higgins was there. Hawk. He was there with Jay Higgins, and we also saw from Quinn Schulte. We'll get some thoughts on those guys and their appearance at Big Ten Football Media Days, a football-heavy Friday. Ooh, I love a football Friday. We continue Locked On Hawkeyes. Today's episode of the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Buie, take us back to his recruitment. I mean, what was it? I think Boston College and like South Florida were kind of his other major offers. We're not talking about a big time prospect here. Can you kind of remember the recruiting profile? And Iowa, a position that's difficult to recruit. These are the kind of guys that they probably have to go after.
Yeah, his dad was an NFL guy too, and you thought maybe he would get some more attention there, and he just never did. But I think he just liked what he saw from Iowa, liked the opportunity to come in and play wide receiver, and they've been raving about it ever since he got on camp. That he just on campus, that he was just kind of different. He was really solid and able to make plays, and just kind of took to it naturally. And it's interesting, Dayton Howard's kind of moving up there a little bit. We haven't seen much from Alex Moda. Every time I see Alex Moda, he's in a walking boot. So you wonder if he's just been kind of cursed early in his career with the injury bug, because seriously, like every time I've seen him, he's been in a walking boot of some sort. And it's just, it's frustrating, because you'd like to see that kid get out there and see what he can do.
Let's jump to the three players that were in Indianapolis with you, Tom. Jay Higgins, sure. Luke Lachey, and Quinn Schulte. Higgins, Lachey returning for the second year in a row to media days. And let's start with Quinn Schulte. Maybe your top takeaway talking with him, the quarterback of the defense. We know how important that free safety position is in the Iowa scheme and what they have to do with the defensive backfield. Phil Parker puts a lot of trust in that free safety, and Quinn Schulte's done a nice job throughout his career.
He has, and the affection that guys like, it tells you just how good Quinn Schulte is, because Jay Higgins and Nick Jackson essentially kind of said they weren't going to come back unless Quinn Schulte was coming back, because they just rely on him so much, because he makes sure they're in the right spot so they can go make a play. And he is essentially the quarterback of the defense and makes everything go and makes all the right calls. And there was a funny story that Kirk shared about Quinn, where for like the first 2 years or so, Phil didn't even say his name or anything, and that's how you could kind of tell that he really liked him, because he was kind of ignoring him.
It's like junior high.
Yeah, he just like pretending that he doesn't like him, but he knew he liked him because he wasn't talking about him, and he just wanted to keep it to himself. So, Quinn's a really solid football player.
Luke Lachey, back for the second year. Honors are going to come his way. You'd anticipate with a healthy season. One thing, listening to Luke a little bit in a couple of the snippets that I saw, that injury that he sustained, it looked gross on the field, but we've seen guys bounce back. I think that was much more significant than was kind of let on, at least in our circles.
Yeah, it was. And here's the interesting thing, because he didn't have a great sprain. And he was coming back from a very serious ankle injury. I mean, it was bad. It was grotesque. The injury was grotesque. And, he was having a tough time kind of just feeling normal, and it was showing up, and the coaches were a little concerned about it. But just in June, he kind of had a breakthrough, and it's just one of those moments where it just kind of started feeling right again, and he started moving the way he was used to moving, and that's massive for the Iowa offense, because now you've got a fully healthy Luke Lachey, not a limited Luke Lachey to go with. Addison Ostrenga, and we saw what he could do last year, and I think Zach Ortworth is going to be pretty good too, and so they got him on the rise. So it's some good options for Iowa at tight end to go with the wide receivers, and then some of the running backs that they're going to throw to this year.
Were you there by Jay Higgins when he came up to ask Kirk a question when he was on that side panel?
I was. It was funny. It's just so funny. He had literally, before Jay had walked up there, he had just spent like 2 minutes just praising the heck out of Jay Higgins.
Oh yeah.
I looked over, and then Jay was walking over, and I was like, oh, he's going to ask him a question.
A good time there. Jay Higgins, dad, kind of gets the headlines. I mean, hawk. How many Hawks were going at this point? I don't know, but he is just one of a kind. He loves the Hawkeyes. He obviously loves his son. That was pretty fun to see. Jay Higgins, though, because of his dad, I mean, in a way, he's almost overshadowed at times, but just a good dude. And for me, he's one of the embodiments of Iowa football. saw him a little bit of times early in his career. He just kind of looked like a guy, right? He's going to be an average linebacker. He waited his turn. He waited for Campbell to move on to the NFL and then just absolutely hits the ground running. That shows me, I mean, this is one of those backbone kind of guys of your football program. Jay Higgins at the Mount Rushmore, if you will, of guys that stick it out and see what happens if you do it the right way.
Yeah, because I kind of thought he'd just be a guy that start for 1 year and have okay year and just be moving on.
Same.
And way exceeded my expectations, and that's a credit to Jay, but also a credit to Seth Wallace, who coaches that position group, to get him ready. And Seth would tell you that he was like, "Hey, Jay's really good. Jay's going to be good. Just you watch. He's ready to go." And as that season went on, you could just see the chemistry grow between Jay Higgins and Nick Jackson back there, where it was kind of choppy out of the gate a little bit, especially for Nick. But by the end of the year, they were just clicking on all cylinders, and that's a good sign for this year. And I think they've got the other thing that's been remarkable to me, besides all the running backs staying, is all the linebackers staying. I mean, with Jaden Harrell and Carson Shire and guys like that are sticking around and not complaining about, why are these 6-year guys sticking around here?
Mm-hmm.
I think that tells you about the chemistry of the team.
It says a lot. Another angle to go with you, haven't got to defensive backfield. John Nestor listed as a starter. For the people that say, well, he incumbent, nobody ever loses their job in Iowa football. Well, here's Dushan Lee, who was thrust into a difficult spot last year, goes in there at the beginning of the year for Jamari Harris during the suspension for sports wagering. Then at the end of the year for Cooper DeJean, started a lot of games, did a lot of good things for him a year ago. But here's John Nestor listed as a starter.
Yeah, and I've been singing John Nestor's praises for a while, so I'm patting myself on the back with this one because you just could see it coming. He's a Phil Parker kind of guy, coach's kid, but just makes all the smart plays. Just kind of hyper, but in a good way, and high energy. And I'm anxious to see him out there. I think Jamari and Sean Lee is going to be an interesting battle. He got Castro too at the Cash. I mean, just how good he was the second half of the year. I mean, and Phil will even tell you that he's not Bob Sanders, but he's the first guy that kind of makes you think about Bob Sanders in a while. Just the way he was playing with the kind of the straight line speed and the way he was just coming like a freight train downhill. I'd keep an eye out too on Cohen Intringer. Had a little bit of a knee issue after the season, but that's a guy that's on the rise, and Phil's been singing the praises of Zach Lutmer, who backs up Quinn Schulte. So that defensive backfield got some talent, even after next year when guys like Schulte and Harris are going to be gone. There's still a bevy of talent back there on the back end of the Iowa defense.
So, a question. Tom Kakert, HawkeyeReport.com. We're going to continue our conversation and wrap things up. There's just so much football. We just continue on and on and on. Love the football talk with Tom Kakert. And we got a little bit more for you as we roll through on a football Friday. Miller and Condon, 106.3 KXNO is where this was first heard, my radio show. And we're bringing it to you here as well on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Back more with Tom Kakert in a moment. Look, I love sports. I think you know this at this time, and I love them so much. I never want them to stop. Playoffs have finished up. We got the spring and summer sports. Those are over. We're in the midst of baseball, but there's just fewer games. Yes, there's some good things around the corner, but they just don't sports like I want them to. FanDuel, though, they let those sports keep going whenever I want. All I have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime that I'm in the mood. And I'll tell you, there's some big things around the corner. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up call customers. That's right. New and existing customers with a boost or a bonus daily. Each and every day, there's something for everyone every day all summer long. If you're looking at football, maybe you're taking a look at those prop markets that are out there. It could be the NFL. It could be college football. Iowa to win the Big Ten. How about a stab at 40-1? It's up at FanDuel.com. Head over to FanDuel.com and make the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball, as we continue the conversation with Tom Kakert from HawkeyeReport.com. HawkeyeReport.com. Question for you here. If there's an injury in the defensive backfield, and obviously if Castro's hurt, who would go to Cash? If a safety's hurt, we'd anticipate Castro would go back probably to one of the safety positions, and they'd slide that way. Nestor was listed as the backup there. Would that just, it's simply Nestor would move to Cash, and then probably Deshaun Lee or TJ Hall then would come in at cornerback? Is that the simplest equation if there is an injury in that defensive backfield?
Yeah, I would guess so. That'd be what I would anticipate. I'm not, and I'm going to have Phil on our podcast on Monday.
Oh, nice.
But I want to ask him about Cohen Entringer too, because maybe he gets a look at cornerback.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just to get him on the field. You got to figure out a way to get him on the field, and maybe he's going to get a look there because they're just super high on the kid and the way he plays and the athleticism he has.
Finally, for you, the quarterback position. I think some people were surprised by Brendan Sullivan being listed third, not the backup. Remember, he hasn't practiced. It shouldn't be a surprise for that one. Listening to Kirk, though, this isn't going to be a quarterback competition, right? Cade McNamara is healthy. No. His understanding of the offense, from what I have heard, the gap between Cade as a thrower and Sullivan as a thrower is pretty significant right now. This is Cade McNamara's job.
It's Cade's job. And I suspect that Sullivan's going to end up being the backup. You know, I think Lainez will fight him for it, but I think Sullivan ends up being the number 2 guy. And the thing that Cade will tell you is, you guys haven't seen me fully healthy. Even last year when he was playing, he wasn't fully healthy. You know, he had the quad injury in camp, and even in those practice sessions, really wasn't letting it go the whole way. So now he feels like Cade McNamara of the team that led Michigan, you know, to this college football playoff. So we'll get a look at that and see what he looks like, and just keep him healthy, because if this offense can get from being, you know, 130th in the country or whatever it was, 131 to like 80. Oh boy, it's a world of difference with this defense, provided that line can, you know, the thing to watch. Last year, remember, they were having a tough time getting the quarterback early in the year. Like first 4 games, I don't think they had a sack. And Phil had to dial up some more blitzes. So, and they generated some more pressure. So I'm curious to see if he ends up doing that this year too.
Tom, going to be a fun season. Expectations are high, and I think they're just going to continue to grow as we make our way through August. Next time we'll have you on, it will be August, and football season around the corner, 2 weeks away from Iowa Football Media Day over in Iowa City. Tom, we'll see you over there, and appreciate your time as always. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Trent.
Tom Kakert, HawkeyeReport.com, part of the On3 network, and appreciate him jumping aboard with us here today. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We will be back with you over the weekend, a bonus episode, another conversation with one of the beat writers, David Eicholt. Had an opportunity to catch up with him. We'll come that into your feed over the weekend. Couple more to go as we set our sails for next week. And yes, at the end of the week, we'll be flipping that calendar to August. Can't wait for that. We'll talk to you then and talk to you over the weekend. Locked On Hawkeyes. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. If you're on the other side listening on the audio side of things, 5-star reviews. We greatly appreciate it. We'll talk to you again soon. Go Hawks.